In late summer of 2020, there was a typical night with the boys, and the topic of the rather new hit shonen at the time, Jujutsu Kaisen, was brought up. And all I remember from the conversation was that it was okay. Characters could be talking about the color purple and then VCRs, and that's how powers work. Alright, neat. Quick glance at the characters themselves, and they also seemed okay to me. Nobara stood out the most. I was still interested though. Through hell and back for me, I managed to pick up a good number of volumes and finally sit down to read the story. When I was just twiddling my thumbs, everyone else was getting hooked. The manga started picking up its pace for action and narrative, the anime came in and just absolutely skyrocketed sales for a wider audience, and within less than 2 years by that point, a theatrical movie is released. I guess I better start catching up then, and I did. And here we are with the video for it. However, when it comes to one of the biggest shonen right now, I'm gonna need some help. For something like this, I've got the one man who knows his shonen and more like no one else with refined taste. The man who sails the seas of weekly shonen, Sailor.
Hello, I'm Sailor Clout, or Sailor for short. I run a YouTube channel under the same name, and I'm currently working on a gigantic Attack on Titan video. And I am suffering in the process. But most importantly, I kind of have a hard time shutting up about Jujutsu Kaisen, which is what I'm here to talk about today alongside Adam, and hopefully convince you to start it if you haven't.
We're both here to give our overall general thoughts on this wicked and twisted story, the curse and complex shonen. This is our review of Jujutsu Kaisen.
Gege Akutami, or as I call him when I do my daily prayer in the morning, Goat Akukami, yes, the dick riding is crazy, started out with creating 3 different one-shots for Shonen Jump between the years of 2014 and 2016. Kamishiro Sosa, Number 9, and Nikai Bongai Barabarajura. The only one I could find any English translation for was Kamishiro Sosa, so I can't really give a rundown on the others. But besides just sounding like a scrap name for a Chief Keef and Persona 5 collab, Kamishiro Sosa is a decent read. It centers around the 2 characters of Ganji and Suzuama Miya, who are both police officers who wield god weapons to deal with gods. In this chapter, they deal with a false prophet who covers an entire island with a pot lid, which is just straight up a curtain from Jujutsu Kaisen proper, and from there the hijinks ensue. Like I said, it's fine. Ganji and Miya are likable, the action is solid. Riko, oh, good God, Riko. I have spent but a few pages with you, Riko, and I am already down atrociously. There's even a twist at the end that I thought was pretty good. The one thing that drags it down for me is that there's a lot of talking here, and not a lot of it is all that interesting. The powers are also a bit confusing as well, but I'm gonna chalk that up to translations this time around. Anyway, in 2017, Akutami dropped Jujutsu Kaisen 0, a 4-piece of all hits and no misses. And Shonen Jump realized that, so in the following year, 2018, Akutami created Jujutsu Kaisen officially. A story about a boy named Yuji Itadori being pulled into a world of curses after swallowing a cursed object which spawned a demon inside of him. And if I had to sum up what the rest of the story is about in just a few short words, cause Lord knows I could talk about this forever, Yuji has a line near the very beginning of the series where he says, "And I can't say what I'll be thinking when I die, but I'm not gonna regret the way I live." Something that the series establishes a lot throughout its entirety is that the world of Jujutsu is oppressive. Not only just because you have to worry about dying 24/7, unless your name is Satoru Gojo, but because of how the world itself is run. A bunch of elders try to sit around and box in the younger generations by enforcing these outdated ways of thinking. The Zenin clan being the biggest example with their stance on gender roles. Naoya, someone who's slotted to be the next leader of the clan, is introduced by saying that women are inferior and should be seen as nothing more than beings who cater to men. And if they can't do that, then they should just die. So there's that. The world of Jujutsu is already plenty hard. Being a sorcerer is a thankless job, one where you're saving people who are either kind and loving or people who would applaud a child dying because of their stupid beliefs. You never know. Of course, the heroic thing to do is to just save everyone. But the sorcerers of Jujutsu Kaisen aren't heroes. They're just people. In fact, a majority of sorcerers signed up for this because of a selfish desire. They're unapologetically who they are. And so that creates a huge theme for the story about living the life you want to live without anyone else forcing you to do anything. And that theme goes for not only the heroes, but also the villains as well. Life is already hard. You shouldn't be letting anyone else tell you how to live it. You could die at any moment, so live your life to the fullest.
The story is pretty gritty with what transpires, monsters that not only lurk in the dark, but in broad daylight too. Thankfully, the Jujutsu sorcerers are here to stop them with the use of cursed energy. Oh wait, hold on. Cursed energy. There is a difference. With this series being a battle shonen, fighting is everywhere. Cursed energy is one of the elements that puts JJK on the reading list for people to check it out. Why? Well, to be blunt, cursed energy is fucking confusing, so it makes for a great conversation starter. Seriously though, on the most basic level, cursed energy is gathered from negative emotions. You can't just use that energy though, it's too raw and volatile. When you concentrate on it though, you can create a cursed technique, which are the actual abilities. I know some people like to compare cursed energy to Nen from Hunter x Hunter. They're really not alike. People just say that because there's a lot of words. Nen is more on the basis of you have an ability, so you fall into a category. Plus, unlike Nen, you can't even really create an ability. It's flat out said that you're just kind of born with your cursed technique. So cursed energy is more like you have a technique and that's it. And it's all the other stuff around it that makes it complicated. Binding vows, reversal techniques, barriers, simple domains, domain expansions, maximums, heavenly restrictions, extensions, manipulations of any kind, and whoo boy, it is quite a lot. And on top of that, some techniques themselves just have a great deal of information to the point where it just kind of becomes overwhelming. And that's kind of a fault I see for cursed energy. There's almost too much at first. So much so that the extras and volumes are bonus pages of Akutami explaining even more about the energy and techniques. And honestly, most of it is just numerical jargon that really doesn't add too much. Akutami is doing a power scaler's homework for them. Good? Look, my love for Gojo is infinite, but man, there's gotta be a better way to explain his power. Projection sorcery? Don't even get me started on that. And then everything with Hakari's technique. What the fuck is this? I'm pretty sure Jogo saw this when he was hit with the unlimited void. However, it's not all bad. When the powers are relatively simple, or when you finally understand them, it's good, great even. The main trio have amazing techniques, for example, be Inumaki, walk up to someone with cursed speech and tell them to shit themselves. My ass-loving bestu friendo, Todo, and his amazing ability of Boogie Woogie, switch places with someone to remind your enemy of the streets, literally ratio someone to death with Nanami, tap the mass mind and cause your opponent to see everything, and a genuine brilliant idea of simplicity being used at its fullest. The Black Flash. When a sorcerer is in total control of their cursed energy, and with exact timing, the dark sparks choose those who are blessed and cursed, and dance to unleash an explosive and devastating attack, fast and strong like lightning itself. The Black Flash. But once again, in Akutami fashion, I have to read more than what's needed to understand something rather basic. How the series likes to fully explain a Black Flash is like this. A Black Flash is a distortion in space that occurs when cursed energy is applied within a microsecond of a physical hit. When a sorcerer is able to achieve this, their cursed energy flashes black, and the destructive power of their strike is equal to a normal hit to the power of 2.5 times.
Oh, so it's basically a critical hit?
I mean, that's a crude interpretation of it, I guess. But I've made my point. Cursed energy? A little shaky at first, but when it hits, ooh, it hits like Itadori. And speaking of Tiger Boy and friends, the powers themselves aren't just there for show and pizzazz. There is more to them. and that's what the characters are here for.
The power system by itself is something that I really like about the series, but what takes it to that next level for me is how it defines the characters in said series. Pretty much every character you can think of has a power that connects back to their personality. And considering we learned just recently that removing this part of yourself leads to death, I think it's safe to say that that connection was built on purpose. Trying to understand Gojo's limitless technique is basically you stepping into the unlimited void yourself. Just hearing him explain it barely makes any sense. It doesn't sound possible. It shouldn't be possible. Negative numbers? What are you even talking about? But it is possible. And why? Because he's the strongest. He's Satoru Gojo. That's why he's the GOAT! And that simple explanation for it is so important because it not only demonstrates how much of a problem this walking cheat code is in combat, but the problems he has to deal with because of the power he has. Megumi has the 10 Shadows technique, an ability that has so much versatility as we see throughout the series, but Megumi doesn't use it to its full potential, which goes back to him not knowing how to bring out that potential consistently because of something holding him back. Todo's Boogie Woogie technique seems simple on the surface, but it's actually sorta complicated, hinting at Todo looking like nothing but a meathead on the surface, but thanks to his 53,000 IQ, he's actually really smart. Nobara having a hammer and nails to help her use her curse technique is a reference to the saying, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down, which circles back to the village she grew up in, a place where Nobara felt like she would have gotten hammered down or forced to conform, losing who she is in the process, which is what brought her to Tokyo in the first place. In a way, her curse technique symbolically and literally brought her to where she is today. There are other examples that I could focus on, like my boy Yuji, or definitely Maki and Toji, since they both have heavenly restriction, but I'll save that for another time. Instead, I'll say one last thing about the characters that I really like, and that's that Akutami lets them still have a sense of humor. Even with all the horrible stuff that goes on, they're still allowed to be funny whenever there's some downtime, as well as develop when that time comes. My dad always says that there's a time and a place for everything, and I feel like Jujutsu Kaisen has that down pat.
Alright, the writing side of things are well done. How's the art? The art style is definitely something I've heard a good number of people throw some criticism at, and honestly, I can understand. Especially if you're like me and were spoiled from the anime and saw how everything was crisp and clean, and then you look at the manga and it's sketchy, to say the least. Not really a fan of how the noses are drawn for a chunk of the series, that's for sure. There's no mistaking it for Akutami's style, though. I can certainly say he has a knack for creatures and monsters, there's no doubt about that. Admittedly, I think for the first few volumes, there's definitely a struggle to really capture those fast-paced action storyboards that he imagines, evident from the fact that projection sorcery is literally about frame data and animation. And then some of the more intense moments people talk about from the anime aren't even in the manga to begin with. Fight back! Fight back! Though, one thing I do really like that is in the manga is that I sense the weight of characters when they're moving or performing an action. For example, when Yuji does this flip, or on the opposite end when Miwa is about to unsheath her blade, I can tell their back is truly being put into the attack. It's noticeable with characters that are more physical, Yuji, Maki, Toji, Yuta, Naoya, and so on. And despite there being a guy running around with a power called the Limitless, JJK is a bit more grounded. They are characters who are still human, most of them, and the work of a sorcerer isn't pretty. We've definitely learned that for sure. So that rough and unrefined art style is what defines a series and isn't fully being discarded as the art improves. The details to movement, punches, kicks, facial expressions, poses, destruction, and death are given more focus, and a lot of that is really centered during the Shibuya arc, where 80% of it, around every other corner in 2 blocks, there's just non-stop, unrelenting kinetic fighting being done. This is also the point of the story where we didn't have to stop to learn about an abundance of details for cursed energy or techniques. So the art having that crude finish to it is what gives it that dark and rather gritty mark, Plus, honestly, when Akutami actually tries for the covers, everyone looks nice. Except for Kusakabe. Fuck him. An absolute deplorable man that adds nothing, but will be added to my negatives list. And what are they in this series? Well, nothing too serious.
So, surprise, surprise, I don't have many cons when it comes to this masterpiece, but there is one thing that bothers me about it: heavenly restriction. Okay, so in chapter 38, Mechamaru explains it as a binding you're born with. You have no control over it, it just happens. But then, 4 chapters later, we learn that Maki also has heavenly restriction on her body, but it's a different type? Okay, that's weird to introduce a new variant of that already, but whatever, I can accept that. The problem is that Maki was supposed to be born with the curse technique, but she traded it in for superhuman physical abilities. First off, how did she do that? Second, why did she do that? I mean, part of me is willing to let it go because she's so much cooler without one, but on the other hand, that seems like such an important detail about her that we should know. And yeah, that's about it.
Playing off of that segment, you could just say it's not meant to be taken literal. However, pretty much being a normal human with superhuman strength isn't really much of a heavenly restriction compared to Mechamaru and others, but whatever. For any of the problems there were for me, I've personally already covered it to an understandable degree. You guys get the idea by this point. Curse energy? Confusing? Kinda. Is it enjoyable though? Yeah. And the art style does improve and work very well with the power system later on. And honestly, the anime heavily spruces up a lot of things to make it more digestible, mostly in terms of pacing and some character moments. When it comes to our final thoughts,
overall, I think this series is something special and well worth your time if you haven't given it a shot already. And hey, even if you have, I say give it the old college try one more time. You may just enjoy it a lot more the second time around. Now is the best time to get caught up, too. The Shibuya incident is, in my opinion, the best arc in the series, and this current arc, the Culling Games, has the potential to surpass it. Now, if we could just get Megumi to use the Black Flash technique, all will be well in the world.
Jujutsu Kaisen is a great series. It shows us what a story like this can be by feeling unique, modest, and straight to the point, with its darker, painful story, complex power system, and characters that, despite whatever the hell they do, they are lovable in some aspect by everyone. Naoya and Jogo stay winning by losing. I love to see it and want to see more. It's a rapid take on what battle stories like these can become. Its first couple of arcs do feel a bit slow in comparison, but gradually ramps up more and more without getting too insane or too ridiculous. It feels like a fighting game or a game with combos in general. At first, you're bombarded with a shit ton of things that you should and can do, and it feels a bit discouraging, but the longer you stay with it, you start to understand more, to where it's second nature, and then everything is off the rails and it's just addicting. I absolutely thank Sailor for joining me on this project, and hopefully there's going to be more like this in the future. And that is our review on Jujutsu Kaisen. I don't think there's really anything else left to say. I mean, hopefully, the season 2 of JJK, so the Shibuya arc in general, will be really good and animated pretty well. And hopefully that's pretty much just about it. I think the manga has not too much left to go. Besides the fact that, around every other corner someone's dying, but, I mean, that's just kind of whatever. But, yeah, enough rambling. You guys get the idea. For those who stayed around to this point, you're the real MVPs, that's for sure. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. You know what to do with all the links that I provide and everything of the sort. Thank you for watching. That's greatly appreciated, of course. Have a great day, have a great night, and everything else, you know what to do.